with limited word counts and captions, you know, Twitter, I don't even know how many characters, it's like 150 characters you're allowed. I find it's easy to oversimplify messaging, and sometimes that can lead to misunderstandings behind the value of a product, and sometimes even greenwashing. So I'm wondering how brands can use social media to communicate their values effectively, and does collaboration play a role in this somehow? Wouter?
From a brand perspective, I think it's very important to make a good connection nowadays with the end consumer. But it first starts, I think, as a brand, you have to know what is your end consumer. So it's very important to know what is your target audience, and then you can make some content to reach them out, and that links and refers to their behavior and to their interest, for example. I think a lot of brands are just shooting a couple of times a day or a week some content that is not matching with the end consumer. That's really buying their products in the stores in the end. But of course, there are a lot of possibilities, and it's very important nowadays to get it done in the right way. But there are a lot of ways to reach your target audience in the end. Yeah.
Right. It's definitely super important to know who you're speaking to. I know sometimes I actually even get confused where maybe I'm talking to the industry, but I have to remember I'm talking to the consumer, and that message is so different than what it would be talking to the industry. So definitely knowing who you're speaking to is so important. Eda, would you like to touch on this one?
Sure. I think this is, by the way, not happening only on digital platforms. I also see so many brands, so many hang tags that claim sustainability or, you know, claim doing the right thing by basing it to nothing. It's just like a nicely put words, which is kind of in the end confusing the end consumer, because they are not as like good with the terminology as we are, obviously. So I think it is really important to ease the message out, because life is already very hard, and knowing so many complexities is not helping anyone. But if you base the easing out on realities, and if you're honest about what's happening, I think that's the way to do things. So transparency for sure is important, and for that you need to be honest. And for that, so sustainability and responsibility really needs to be your core value. So when you reflect it, it's already there. Like all your business is composed of these things. So anything you capture and anything you tell actually tells a different side of the responsible journey. I also find your point of collaboration really important here. This is a big problem we all have. And for a common problem, we need a common solution. So joining forces with other brands or other producers or, you know, influencers or media or other parts of the value chain for sure eases things out. And then you also have you spend less effort and less time, but you find a better solution and maybe find some other perspectives. So I think collaboration is really vital as well.
Yeah, I really like that, finding other perspectives, because a lot of the time collaboration, I find, you know, your collaborating partner is generally in the same demographic or world as you. So their audience is most likely similar to their audience. So basically doubles your exposure there too. Matthew, would you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, the biggest issues I've seen, and I think it's getting better, certainly, but at the beginning, when people start to get the ball rolling, realizing they need to communicate through social media to their customers, they didn't really have an idea about their brand narrative, or certainly the brand narrative that they wanted to tell. So that really has to be strongly developed initially. And then obviously, just on a practical point, content has to be produced to support that narrative as well. When it comes to collaborations, it's essential, because you can support your brand narrative by collaborating with the right people. But part of that decision has to be that they are also invested in their narrative, and it aligns with your narrative as well, and that they're supporting that with the right amount of content, or you can support each other, creating content for each other. And so that can work hand in hand. One of the best examples I've seen of that went right from the beginning of the rise of social media was Candy Annie with Denham. they told the story of developing stretch denim, and now they're telling the story about the sustainability that Candy is putting into their jeans, and by proxy making Denham a more sustainable brand. And that's a very, very good collaboration, and that supports it. It supports the narrative. Denham is a very forward-thinking Denham is a forward-thinking denim brand, and Candy is one of the most forward-thinking milk. And so that it works perfectly as a collaboration partner. And we need to see more of that, because the amount of content that needs to be provided is just going to be more and more, I think, as things go on. As consumers.
So you mean we need to see more of that because you want some work? Sorry.
No interruptions. Okay, I'm done.
You're right. So yeah, no, I think that example was perfect. Like, that is the perfect collaboration. I think it's so important that not only you're speaking to the right person, is that the narrative is there too. Because when you're trying to tell a story, that has to be solid, or else you're not going to be able to produce that content that will push that story forward too. So, Robin, would you have anything to say too?
I think I agree to Wouter that before you even start with social media, it's important to find out who is the audience you are talking to, and also what is the purpose for the whole campaign. Because I think when you're just a brand and you want to be seen, you can just post some good looking photos and you're there. And you repeat, and people will see your name, remember your name, and maybe buy a jeans in the end. But when you really want to communicate your important values, I think it goes deeper. So before you even start, you need to think, what's the purpose of this campaign? And when you have the purpose, I think it's important to create a story, because what I see a lot is that companies just throwing fancy words like sustainability, cradle to cradle, responsibility, terms like that. And for me, it lost value in just a few months. Like, what is sustainability? I don't even care if a brand is sustainable, because all the brands are sustainable, even if they're not. So I think the story is very important, and the story needs to be real. And when those two things are there, I think working together with influencers or with media is important, because you are limited on social media. So like you said, you only have like 140, 150 words on Twitter. So you need space to communicate, and you need partners with the right audience, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, for sure. And Thomas, did you have anything to add to this too?
I do. I mean, and we're talking about how brands can use social media to communicate their values effectively. And I think, addressing that part of the question, if we assume that the values are ingrained in the company culture and in the product and in the people that work there, you only really just need to be yourself. And I mean, you need to put your people in front and let their personalities shine through, because the only thing that no one can take away from you, like unless they buy them out, is your staff, your people. So you want to focus on that. I think the values lie there. You need to have them, effectively communicated, and to Matthew, you stole my example, because I would also say a perfect example would be our mutual friend Simon. He is that company, or he at least represents that company in a very good way. So look at what he would do, for instance. Look at that, and yeah.
Perfect. From everything there, we can definitely tell that an honest story is very important to tell. It's pointless to produce content that has no meaning or value to it, because I think that can actually almost hurt your brand too. If you're producing meaningless content, people aren't going to value it as much, and they're not going to come to you anymore. So an honest story and knowing who you're speaking to is so important when communicating and choosing what collaborations to do.